Okay guys, so I'm going to give you all some early spring hollowbody topwater frog fishing tips. If you're out in this big old patch of weeds like I am, the lily pad's grown up, the bluegill moved back into the grass, there's frogs jumping around now. So the bass are bedded up just sitting underneath all these lily pads. And you're just casting in every direction, trying to find them. First off, you're going to want to use somewhat natural colors, I mean, if you got an overcast like today, black works good because you got the white shining down on the water. So every time they look up, all they see is white. You're throwing a frog with a white belly, they're not going to see it very well. And if you're fishing heavy cover like this, I like to use a frog with a paddle tail. I got the Teckle Sprinkler frog, or they got this Booyah pad crasher toad runner thing. If you're trying to match bluegill, I always like to dye the tail just a little with some chartreuse. Gives it kind of a bluegill color, because their tails are chartreuse. Another thing, if you're kayaking through these lily pads, you always want to run the frog through right where you're about to kayak through before you kayak through it, because if you don't hit that spot, you're going to risk scaring off some of them bass. And you never know, like in here, this spot right here, I missed probably around an 8-pounder the other day. I got them all the way up to the boat, it was turned upside down, facing the other direction, so the frog just come right out of the roof of his mouth. But if I wouldn't have thrown there before I started kayaking, I would have scared them off before I got a chance to get a hook in them. So if it's sunny outside, I like to throw something more natural, like something with a white color belly, maybe a yellow, but overcast, I always use black. Works really good. So just keep that in mind. Another thing, some days these bass aren't moving a lot, they're just kind of staged up in certain areas. If you're getting a lot of bass just following and they're not grabbing the bait, they're just kind of chasing it around, you can run this thing up on top of a lily pad and just sit on top of that lily pad just like that and bump that frog just a little, just to where that lily pad shakes a little bit. A lot of times they'll blow up on that lily pad and knock that frog into the water, grab it, start taking off. And another thing you can do, you can cast, if you got little sticks and twigs sticking up, you can cast over one of them sticks, just hang it off into the water, bump it up and down like that, right on top of the water. Then things will come out and just grab it and drag it underwater. So, also you can hear when the bluegill are up in the lily pads or up in the grass, because they make this suction popping sound. You'll just hear that all over the place. It means them bluegill are staging up in the grass. The bass are most likely to be up in the grass because they're feeding on them bluegill and on them baby frogs. And in the early spring, spot fishing works out tremendously. Most of the bass I catch on a topwater frog, I catch while spot fishing. You see a bass hit, and he's close enough for you to get a cast right over him. I mean, just pass him up by a couple of feet and drag it right over the top of him. A lot of times you'll get a bite, sometimes you won't, but it's a 50-50 chance. There's all different types of frogs. You got paddle tail style frogs. These aren't actually frogs, but you got, these mimic bluegill sitting on top. You hit it, walk it back and forth like this. And these work really good too. This is a lunker hunt prop fish. Swims just like this and makes a little wake behind it. You got these yap frogs. It's kind of like a jitterbug. These work really good in heavy cover too. You want to walk these back and forth just like that as well. The one I really like to use in heavy cover besides the paddle tail frogs is going to be a popping frog. These things work really good in heavy cover because they make a big old splash, You're working in heavy cover, you don't want to throw something out there that doesn't have any action. You want to throw something out there that gets their attention. When I am throwing a frog with a paddle tail, I like to throw it out and have a slow, steady retrieve. Some days they like it faster, some days they like it slower. You'll just have to sit there and experiment and figure out what they want. But one thing that I've noticed when I use these is if you get a bite while you're retrieving it in and you stop it, it's just not natural. They don't like that. I've tried it and tried it. People say the fish is following it, just stop. Every time I've had a bite and I've stopped a frog with a paddle tail, the fish lose interest. So if they bite it, just keep retrieving it, keep retrieving it. You can slow it down just a little bit, but they want to see that action on top of the water. Also, if you're bringing your frog in and you get wrapped around a lily pad, they get sucked underwater or something, or if a bass hits it and you miss the bass, make sure you always empty the water out of your frog, because it's not going to have the same action if it's full of water. It's going to be sitting too far down in the water. You start reeling it through the lily pad, it's going to get sucked underwater. It's not going to be doing what you want it to do. So But the most important tip to frog fishing, if you haven't done it before, when the bass hits this frog, he just grabs it and drags it underwater, and he has it right in front of his mouth, kind of like that. Once he starts swimming away, that's when he actually sucks it down into his mouth. So if you set that hook too early, you're just going to rip it straight out of his mouth. You want to wait. I usually give it about 2 seconds for him to suck it down in his mouth, turn, start running away. You reel down, and you want to set the hook really, really hard. I always use a heavy action rod, medium heavy. Just you can catch them on a medium heavy rod. It just really doesn't have enough backbone. You want a heavy rod. I'm running 60-pound braid on this because I'm dragging it through some really heavy stuff, but 45 pound, between 45 pound and 65 pound braid is ideal. So, because if you think about it, you're not just pulling in this bass straight out of the water. You're dragging them through around stumps, you're dragging them around weeds. It's going to be twice as heavy as it normally is. I catch 1 and 2 pound fish all the time on these frogs, and when they get them weeds wrapped up around them, it feels like you're fighting a 5 or 10 pounder. I mean, it's heavy, so you're going to want some strong braid for that too. Now there's a good example. You see, he hit it. I set the hook way too early. Wasn't thinking. Caught me off guard. It's going to happen sometimes, but you see how I missed that fish? Thought I had him still because I was wrapped around a lily pad. It gives you an example of how heavy it could get when you're reeling in these fish, because I got stuck on one stem of one lily pad, and I had to drag my kayak to the lily pad just to get it off. So you're going to want to run heavy braid. I hope these tips help you out with your early spring topwater frog fishing. If you have any more tips, comment down below. If you're new to my channel or you just enjoy watching kayak fishing videos, please like, subscribe, comment, share, or check out my Facebook page linked down below.